You're listening to Served Up, a podcast that features inspiring beverage professionals and topic experts that share their passions through meaningful conversations. I'm your host, Bridget Albert, also known as the Market Fresh Mixologist, an industry mentor with decades of experience. Grab a cocktail and sit back. Let's learn how we can make a positive impact in our industry. Hey y'all, it's Bridget here. I'm excited to introduce you to Hanley, a true leader in the world of spirits and the driving force behind the International Wine and Spirits Competition. With her passion for excellence and dedication to celebrating the best in the industry, Hannah is helping set the standard for innovation, quality, and craftsmanship in spirits worldwide. From the judges that she selects to world-class entries to fostering new talent, her impact on the industry is undeniable. So sit back, relax, grab yourself your favorite cocktail, and enjoy the show. Hannah, welcome to Served Up. I am really happy to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Can you tell our listeners a bit about yourself, your background? Where are you located, and how in the world did you get into the beverage industry?
Sure, of course. So my background is in PR and marketing. I actually was a ski bum and lived in Montana and Utah for a while, and then moved back to the Northwest. I'm from this area, from the Pacific Northwest. And so once I moved back, I was looking for a job, and I found a tasting room that was hiring Heritage Distilling, which is a small distillery here in the Northwest. Worked my way up. I ended up becoming CMO of Heritage and did a lot of product development, innovation, strategic work, tons and tons of different projects, lots of different hats, as we always say in the industry, other duties as assigned, things like that. And then I was recruited by Nate Ganna to work with him with the International Wine and Spirits Competition and then help manage his business operations. So I stepped away from Heritage about a year and a half ago. And I, since then, have started my own company called Savor Strategies. And I consult and do marketing and help Nate with his business. And most of all, also work as president of U.S. operations for IWSC.
Let's talk a bit about that, because you've had quite a journey, going from tasting room into one of the most prestigious spirit and wine competitions in the world. That's quite a jump. It's a big jump. It's a big leap. And you do it really, really well. I have been a judge for your competition this past year. I got to see, the talent that you bring in, the quality of spirits that enter, and it really blew me away. And so can you talk about that transition that you made and what really excited you about the potential of joining such a prestigious spirit competition?
Yeah, sure. So IWSC is the really elite global competition in the wine and spirits industry. The growth for IWSC has really started over the last couple of years. It's been a London-based competition for, I think it's almost 50 years now. And when they started looking at global competitions for the next, few years, that started a couple of years ago, the U.S., of course, was one of the key markets. And Nate, who is a good friend of mine and has been a judge for a couple of years now for IWSC, he approached Christelle, who's the CEO of IWSC, and they chatted about bringing it to the U.S. And Nate is an amazing guy, super creative, not really a logistics guy, and he's the first to admit that. So he knew that he would need to bring a partner on to help make IWSC happen, and that's me. And so he came to me and said, "Hey, I have this opportunity to do this great competition. Can we work together on it?" I have a big logistics background. I come from project management. I come from marketing, of course. I can be creative as well, but really, the logistics and getting the partnerships and creating those relationships with the brands to bring the competition together. It's huge and it's important to me and it's fun and it's a different challenge. And, the competition world of the spirits industry is varied, but I think at the end of the day, competitions are important because they give value to brands in the sales world. And so it's an important aspect of the industry. And I think what people don't think about is the logistics, which I didn't either until they brought me on. But I also think it's kind of fun to talk about the background that Nate and I have. So Nate was best friends with my brother, and
You're kidding.
I'd been working at Heritage for I want to say 7 or 8 years, and Nate it still is one of the biggest whiskey influencers in the world. And he it was chatting with my brother, who's also Nathan, and he and Nate, they were talking together, and they're like talking about the industry. And my brother was like, "Oh, did you know my sister is CMO for Heritage?" And Nate Ganna was like, "No." And then Nathan, my brother, comes to me and says, "Did you know I'm really good friends with Nate Ganna?" And I was like, "No." So, we, through that, kind of got together. We talked for many years, did lots of projects together when I was at Heritage. And then we actually didn't meet until probably 2021 or something like that. And fast friends. And now we're colleagues and work together really closely and work on lots of different projects. But I feel like that answers your question.
Yeah, I think that's really cool because the industry that we're in, no matter what sector of the beverage industry that you're in, it really all has to do with relationships. I don't care how much that we use technology, IT, all of this stuff, right? AI, all of it, is that it does come down to that human to human experience.
Yeah. Relationships are the biggest part of this industry, of really any industry, but especially in the food and beverage industry, in the spirits world, relationships are everything. And they build not only the partnerships between the brands, but the distributors and the retailers and all parts of the tier system. And it comes down to the same thing. Bridget and I, we met through A21, which is an agency that does events, and, fast friends because Bridget was a judge at IWSC. It's like we wouldn't be here today without those introductions that bring people together.
Yeah, 100%. It was really interesting to me. I judge a lot of spirit competitions and have for several decades now. And what I found really unique about this particular spirit competition was how there was already a fast family that was formed. Great group.
That was the goal.
As a newbie, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. Everybody is so kind, very genuine. They come in as their authentic self. And it seems like everybody had been great friends for years.
I think there's a lot of mutual respect within the industry as well of what everyone brings to the table. It takes all parties and it takes all aspects of the industry. And that's really why we kind of handpick the judges for IWSC as well, into a diverse group that can bring a lot of different perspective from across the industry, because it's not just about, distributor. It's not just about retailer. It's about really everyone needs each other. And that's really important.
Yeah, let's talk about that too, because I think that's something else that's very unique for IWSC is the judges themselves. They're not all from one sector of beverage. They really are across the board. Can we talk about how intentional that is, kind of why, and what is the result of having such a diverse group of folks?
The diverse aspect of the judges for IWSC is what really sets the competition apart into this elite group, and what makes winning an IWSC medal so big. To win gold from IWSC is extremely elite. It's where we award maybe 15% of entries gold, which there are many other competitions that are, much higher percentage. All competitions do a great job, but I think what really provides that elite aspect is bringing in judges with different backgrounds, different palates, and different perspectives, frankly, because really in life, perspective is everything. And the perspective that leads to perception is an important aspect of tasting spirits, of judging spirits. It's all blind. And for that, the conversations that happen around a spirit, 95 points, 94 points, a difference between silver and gold is what makes this competition so special.
Yeah. And I also think like the experience that you were able to curate for the judges as well. Like I said, I judge a lot of spirit competitions. We're not always hosted as at a distillery, multiple distilleries, and given tours and activities and, fantastic opportunities to network, not just only with one another, but with brands as well. So can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that concept? Because I do think that is very unique to your competition.
When we decided to bring IWSC to the US in partnership with Christelle and the whole IWSC team, one of the biggest parts that Nate and I felt really strongly about was creating those experiences for judges so that there could be bonding with the judges and between the judges, but also creating the relationships with those brands. So for us, the experience part came through partnerships with the Kentucky Distillers Association, with the Kentucky Bourbon Festival, with a bunch of different groups, really, to bring this group to Kentucky, which Kentucky is one state of 50. There's many distilleries across the United States. Kentucky happens to have a lot of them and a lot of the bigger ones. And I think that for the judges to have an opportunity to experience the heritage and the culture behind the Kentucky distilleries is really what I was trying to convey in the US global judging. And so I think, or what we were trying to convey in the US judging, I think that, we had some great experiences. We went to Heaven Hill, we went to Rabbit Hole, we went to Lux Row. We did great dinner with Cask X, which is a unique company at Bardstown Bourbon Company. Bardstown Bourbon Company was our host for the week. We had a partnership with Libby Glassware, with Glencairn, because they make different types of glasses. And then with Kentucky Eagle was our distribution partner. So it's like bringing all of those different types of companies, for Heaven Hill to be also hosting the same group that Lux Row is hosting, that the same group that Rabbit Hole is hosting. It's unique and it's special and it's really, really cool. And Don Lux came from, which is just, that was awesome. Don Lux
Amazing.
Huge. Luxco is such a huge part of the industry now in a very unknown way for a lot of consumers. But at the same time, what Luxco has built for the industry is just truly unique, in the same way that what Heaven Hill is building is totally different than what Rabbit Hole is building. So we've all been on a distillery tour. We've all been on a winery tour, but at the end of the day, every single tour is still different.
My gosh, totally different. And then it was really fun, I think, as a judge. And I think for a lot of the judges, especially the judges who had never been to Louisville or to Bardstown before, like I'm very spoiled. I live 5 hours from Louisville, been there a million times. However, I always learn something new every single time I go to one of these distilleries. And one of my favorite things is to find out how enamored they are with one another. Even though they are competition, they are brothers and sisters, and really lending a hand to one another, because they just want to build the industry in all the right ways.
100%. The authenticity behind each brand is what really makes everyone so different. And, I think for, a lot of the distilleries, like the experience of hosting someone like Richard Patterson, who is just truly an icon from a Scotch world, but probably would never end up in Bardstown or at Heaven Hill or Rabbit Hole. It's so cool. So also, I just side quest story here. The first day everyone got there. So Richard Patterson wears a full suit everywhere he goes, which is amazing. And
Yes.
he's just he's just very put together. And there's a cemetery in Louisville that is really known for having historic graves, and it's called Cave Hill. And so we went to lunch, and then we kind of had a free afternoon. And Danny from Bardstown was like, "Oh, you guys should go walk around Cave Hill." So Nate and Christelle and Richard and myself went and walked through Cave Hill. And Richard wanted to go see the KFC Colonel Sanders grave. So we walked through Cave Hill all the way to the Colonel Sanders grave. And it was Colonel Sanders' birthday. And there was
weird.
All
That's
these people.
strange.
There was quite a few people there. And then there's people like with the KFC buckets bringing KFC. And Richard's like, what are the odds?
So strange. But, in that cemetery, there are a lot of distillers buried there. A lot of prominent names.
Yes. Yeah. Tons. And we're walking through and he was like, oh, this family and this family. And Richard's, I believe, second or third generation. So the historic aspect's really important to him, and all of the history within just Cave Hill and then the Louisville areas, it's just huge. And I think conveying that is not something you can convey verbally or even through video to people. I think it's just something you have to experience. Yeah.
I think that Louisville itself is just very magical.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. It's very charming for our listeners because, Served Up is worldwide. And for our listeners that have never been, at some point in your life, you should make the trek. It's worth it. It's absolutely worth it, especially if you're a history nerd, because even downtown Louisville has a slew of historical points throughout the city. You just need to walk around. You'll see the placards, and I know you can take a walking tour. And there are distilleries located centrally, right downtown Louisville, outside of Bardstown, which I don't think a lot of folks are aware of.
Yeah, I mean, there's really cool experiences downtown. Like Elijah Craig has an awesome experience. I know Bardstown has one. They just announced Green River is going to be opening a space in downtown. It's the whole, I guess, Distillers Row kind of along there, right? And it's Michter's, there's really cool spots.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Can you talk about, you mentioned the London side of the competition. Can you kind of paint that picture for our listeners? What is that like?
Yeah. So the global judging happens around the world, and the US and Kentucky competition is one of the IWC global competitions where we judge specifically American whiskeys and RTDs. RTDs are such a fast growing category within the industry, and an important aspect of the industry as well. What happens is in May of each year, there's the judging for all global spirits for IWC that would be entered from anywhere across the world that are not being entered into the unique global competition. So also at that, and within London, there is the category leading judging of anyone who is awarded gold or that kind of highest score. Those then get sent to London for next kind of level of judging. And from there, producer trophies are selected. So in November annually, there is the IWC Annual Awards Gala. And at that, the global competition producer trophies are awarded to, there's going to be a bourbon producer of the year. There's a tequila producer of the year. There's wine producer of the year, a somm producer or somm of the year. And so I think all of those really are what makes the IWSC London competition so elite, is that it's not just these unique global competitions that are all over the world. It's then bringing those spirits in to get judged again against the global aspect.
Yeah, that's amazing. Where can our listeners find those results?
On the IWSC website, which is iwsc.net. And every year we announce, right as the competition ends. So in May, and then for us, we announced in September, right after the Kentucky competition. There's also South Africa, China, there's Georgia, there's a competitions all over the world for IWC, which is really, again, what makes it so elite.
Yeah, it's truly one of a kind. In your experience, behind the scenes with the wine and spirit competition itself, I want to just talk about a couple of the categories that are really growing. And you mentioned one, and that was RTDs. And I have judged them multiple times. I typically raise my hand to actually judge them. It's like a nice break on your palate, first of all. And then, second of all, sometimes they're fucking awesome. I can't even believe the flavors that are coming out of these little cans. At one time, it was seen as, oh, if it's coming in a can and it's a pre-made cocktail or whatever it is, it's going to be absolute crap. But that's not the case anymore. And can we just talk a bit about that particular category? Do you see it to continue to grow? And are you seeing more and more submissions?
Yeah. So this is actually the first time that IWC has judged American RTDs was this year. And we got a good amount of entries. I was surprised. And most of all, what I think we found was that the quality is there, the unique flavor profiles are there, and they're very easy to drink. I think what is also important to note is a lot of RTDs are lower ABV, which is also a movement, and no and low is such a movement within the industry. And for people to be able to pour a lower ABV cocktail straight out of a can at home means that, you're not getting a house pour at home, which is fine. There's always a time and place for that. But I think at the end of the day, there's just this really great movement in good flavor, good product, and beautiful packaging. I mean, I love RTD packaging. It's so special and unique and different. And it creates this really kind of creative pressure on brands to grow and develop into something new, which is cool. Yeah. For the future, I definitely think RTDs are going to grow. There's probably going to be consolidation within the industry. There always is. But what is always happens is if the product's good, the marketing's good, the branding's good, it pulls forward. And so there's going to be definitely some unique products, I think, that come through. We had a few espresso martinis entered, which I think it was fun. There was like a nitro one where you shake it and it gets real foamy, which is cool. Lots of margaritas, of course. Tequila's hot right now. So anything with tequila has been doing really well. Within the industry also, I've been seeing some really beautiful glass bottle RTDs. I just got one from a brand called Deco. The flavor is delicious, really light and beautiful, and it's fun. So I think for people, especially who don't have cocktail background, don't have bartending background, making cocktails can be intimidating, and a decision making of what to make. Oh, I have to have all these ingredients at home, or it can be challenging. And so that's really where I see RTDs coming in.
Yeah. I also see people it's such an easy thing to bring to a party as a hostess gift.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. The Deco ones would be beautiful.
One and just bring it. Right.
Yeah.
Especially the friends that, I never come empty handed to someone's home. Right. I'm always bringing the appetizer, sometimes the main course, whatever it might be, but it's such an easy thing to do.
Yeah. I bet, Bridget, you are like a really good guest, a really good house guest. You have Southern
sometimes.
The other category we saw big growth in was ASM. So American single malt growing. We know that TTB is working on building it as a category as a whole. Yeah. But what we saw was some really beautiful American single malt releases. Cedar Ridge in Iowa did wonderful. Their product is one of my favorites right now. One of the best whiskeys I've tried all year. And I think it's really fun and different. And what's cool is there's family story. It's really authentic. It's, based on actual, they grow the farm, they grow the corn on the farm and things like that. And it's like, who knew that great whiskey was going to be made in Iowa?
Yeah, it is such an emerging, like you said, such an emerging category. I think a lot of our listeners are not even aware that this category is happening. Can you talk a little bit about, maybe American single malt versus traditional?
Yeah, sure. So American single malt uses, American single malt grain, which is very different. And then the stylistic approach from my understanding is that it's really based on less traditional styles of aging as well. So there's a lot of different cask types, sherry casks, and all kinds of different casks, right? I think where we'll see the biggest growth in ASM is the education of consumers. And it's going to be a challenge. Of course, it's always a challenge. How do we get consumers involved and engaged? But these brands have been around for 10 plus years now. I mean, Stranahan's it's not new. Westland is not new. And so, it's these brands have been working on it for a long time and creating these really beautiful products that have now been aged for a long time too. So it's over the next probably 5 years. Of course, there's always going to be consolidation within the whiskey industry. But what I would love to see is more understanding of ASM as a category as a whole.
I would agree with you. As even if they have, like you said, they have been here for a decade, they're not plentiful yet.
Yeah.
Right? So I think a lot of folks aren't even aware. And I think it's really fun as someone who does drink single malt whiskeys and love the whiskeys in general. You could totally do a side by side tasting and have some real fun with this category at home.
Totally. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, like bourbon, rye, single malt. They all have very different flavor profiles. I mean, we know that, but I do think, being in the industry too, and probably Bridget, you experience this also. When we're in the industry, we spend a lot of time educating. And I was just at a Halloween party and someone was asking me like, what is the difference between bourbon and rye? And it's something that I haven't actually answered in a while, but brought it back. I think there's still there's always going to be an education aspect of the spirits world. And that's what makes it fun is people want to learn. You got to stay curious. People always want to learn something new.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that the spirit world is not that complicated to learn. Once you understand the distillation behind it, I think that wine is terribly more complicated thanks to the new varieties that are out there. All of the different places around the world that wine is being showcased and made. I am friends with a few master sommeliers who tell me all the time that it was much easier to understand, to study, and wine in general 20 years ago versus today.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, there weren't as many grape varietals, right? Kind of like apples. There's so many different versions of apples now. And I mean, I always, I live in Washington, but I talk with my parents a lot. My dad grew up in Eastern Washington around the orchards and stuff. And he's like, there was no Honey Crisps when I was growing up.
Like Red Delicious, green and grainy.
Yeah. Like no one's eating Red Delicious anymore because they're not delicious.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's definitely changed. But I think that within, the spirit competition itself, it does come down to people who care about the industry itself and about hospitality for sure. And so, as judges, I feel like I can only speak to being one this year, but everybody really wanted to put their best foot forward and really give a fair, deserved score.
Yeah, I think, the way we do it is completely blind. So the judges had no idea what they're tasting. They just know a category. They know, they taste, 8 to 12 at a time based on category and go through about 6 to 7 panels a day as well. And it's pretty quick. I mean, these are professionals who can move pretty quickly through something and tell whether they like it or not. And the way we also do it is in, panel tables. So 3 to 4 people per table where there's a full discussion. So if someone's saying, wow, this one is, 50 points and someone else at the table is saying, and oh no, I love it. It deserves a 90 points. There's a full discussion about that. And then that product gets moved up to our our head judges, which this year, Don Davis and Richard Patterson.
Mm-hmm.
So Don is the head whiskey buyer for Whiskey Exchange in London, and she tries a lot of whiskey through the
Yes.
years. So she has an amazing palate, not just for whiskey. And I think one of the cool parts also is that because it is so blind, that they have no idea. Like we had, Danny from Bardstown sitting on judging panels. He's not judging the Bardstown products, but he has no idea if he is getting the Bardstown products or not. So there is an aspect that there's an integrity and I think, for the judges also like a full discussion around each product, which is cool.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I love how it was the first time that I had ever experienced as a judge, how you kind of level set everyone before the round starts. Can you talk about that? Because that's something I had never seen before in judging.
Yeah, I was going to actually ask you about that. So we just started doing that, from my understanding, with the IWC a couple of years ago, because, people come in and they've brushed their teeth or they've had coffee or they have had a tea in the morning. And it's really to just to set the palate. And I like an amuse-bouche in a lot of ways, and in fine dining, where it's to open your senses. And the idea is that we are pouring something in a category. We tell them the category, and then they all taste it, and as a group decide on a score. And then that kind of calibrates everyone's palate to what the scoring would be for the day. The idea then is that if everyone's giving the product, everyone agrees on a level, then that kind of is setting your sensory for the rest of the day.
Yeah, I thought it was
something we actually learned from wine, from some head sommeliers talked about it and brought it into the spirits judging, which I think it totally changes your palate in a lot of ways, because it allows you to really get into your senses without having to like start with judging something else, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I know it makes perfect sense. And as a judge, I absolutely appreciated it, especially as a new judge. It really kind of set those expectations.
Yeah. Yeah. We had a couple of people who have amazing palates, but had never sat on a judging committee before. And it is a learning process. It's, there's fatigue and there's discussion, and you have to be willing to admit like, hey, I need a break. And all of those aspects are really about self-recognition. And I think for, our new judges to be able to calibrate and sit with the experts who have done it before and learn from that process is a really important part of the industry and part of that judging process.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Can you give some tips to brands that are perhaps listening who would like to enter their product to the IWSC? What advice do you have to the brands?
I think, first of all, it's like, let's look at the deadlines, make sure that the product's ready to go in bottle. And for us, like the logistics side of it, it's a lot of spirits coming into a place, and just please hit the deadlines, because we had quite a few products going into judging. So on the back end, and I think this is really interesting, we get all the spirits. So hundreds of spirits, thousands of spirits and of bottles, and we organize them by category. So they all get sent in boxes, right? We organize them by category, and then the category by day. And if we get to a product that hasn't arrived yet, then we have to track that down, and we have to reach out to the distillery, and it might not make it. And so that's kind of my biggest advice. It's like, please just hit the deadlines.
I think that's really great advice, because if you don't hit the deadlines, you might not be judged.
Yeah, there's a couple that entered and then there was no bottles. And it's like, okay. And I get if you have a whiskey that you're planning to release and it's not quite ready, just send it in a sample label. At least it gets tasted, right?
Right.
So you can always send us a bottle shot later.
Yeah, get it in for sure. What's next for you, Hannah?
We are working on IWSC for 2025 already. And then other than that, I work with Nate on several events. So Nate and I are planning 2025 as well. we're working on a Tales of the Cocktail activation. We're working on some really cool events later in the year, LA Times Food Bowl, working on South Beach. And so lots of cool events. And then, I have family, so I have 2 little kids, and I'm working on just keeping everything in order, I guess, around here.
I'm with you, Mama, on that 100%. I just want to thank you, Hannah, for taking some time to chat with me today. And I would love to have you back again as a guest in 2025 so we can see, of all the great things that you're doing and how they've progressed. And I just want to wish you just some great health and a lot of peace. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. You're so peaceful and zen. I love that.
Thanks for listening. Served Up is brought to you by Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits. Produced by Zunu.online. Music by We Killed the Lion can be found on Spotify. Make sure to subscribe to be notified of our future Served Up episodes. Cheers.